Becoming a professional race car driver takes time. Quitting smoking does too. It's not about stopping in one day. It's about starting with day one. Get the resources and support you need to quit smoking at cancer.org/smokeout.
If you own a gun, you have a full-time responsibility. When you aren't using it, be sure it can't get into the hands of curious children, troubled teenagers, a thief, or anyone else who might misuse it. Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org. This message brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Ad Council.
Text SCHOOL to 225568 to learn about school board meetings. That's school.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a great week. It's Wednesday already. We love a good Wednesday, or I do, at least. I like Wednesdays. I don't know about you, but loaded show today. I played pickup basketball last night for the first time in way too long, and oh, man, I feel old, which isn't good. That's not a good feeling. I woke up this morning like my knees hurt, my ankles hurt. It's not great. It's not great. But something that is great, or something that's going to be great, is football season. We have games starting tomorrow night, Chiefs, Ravens, and then, of course, Sunday, Colts, Texans. And I'm continuing doing this series called My Final Five Takes. I've got a Colts edition and an NFL edition going. We have to start, of course, with the Colts edition. Now, I'm excited to see how Jonathan Taylor plays this year. He should be incredibly fresh after coming off of a career low in touches last year. He didn't play a ton because, he hurt his thumb and he had the contract negotiations at the start of the year that led to him not playing. And if you've listened to my show and you've heard me talk about Jonathan Taylor, you would know that I don't think as highly of Jonathan Taylor as a lot of Colts fans do. I think he's had one great year, and the other 3 years of his career, he's been good. Not great, just good. But that 1 year, 3 years ago, by the way, so it wasn't even that recent, that 1 year, 3 years ago was so incredible that it has inflated the way that everyone else views Jonathan Taylor. I think that this year, we are going to get a similar performance from Jonathan Taylor as to what we saw 3 years ago. I really do. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have a big year this year. And I think that a large part of that is because of who the Colts quarterback is. I think the Colts are going to lean on Jonathan Taylor early in the year while Anthony Richardson gets reacquainted to playing real NFL level football. I think that they want to bring Anthony Richardson on a little bit slowly. Okay, like I don't think that we're going to hop into the first game of the year, and I don't think we're going to see Anthony Richardson, throw the ball 30 times on Sunday. I think ideally the Colts want Anthony Richardson to throw the ball anywhere from 20 to 25 times a game. Okay, that on average, an NFL team runs about 60 plays a game. So that's 35 plays that the Colts aren't throwing the football, hopefully. Okay, that's 35 plays where either, Jonathan Taylor can carry it or obviously Anthony Richardson. And I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to see a lot of action, especially early in the year while Anthony Richardson gets readjusted to playing real NFL regular season games. Okay, when we go back 3 years and we look at that incredible year that Jonathan Taylor had, he had 372 touches 3 years ago, where he had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, right? So that's receiving yards and rushing yards. He was the best running back in the NFL that year. And a large part of it was just because he stayed healthy. When we look at the years following that, like last year, he missed a ton of time. The year before that, he got hurt and he missed, I believe it was, 4 or 5 games. If he stays healthy this year, then I think we will see a similar number of touches, that 370 mark that he had 3 years ago. If he stays healthy, Jonathan Taylor is going to finish the season with over 1,300 yards rushing. If he did that last year, that would have put him second in the NFL to Christian McCaffrey's 1,400 yards rushing. So I think he'll compete for the rushing yards title, right? I think that number ends up being somewhere around 1,300 rushing yards. And I think that he'll follow up with, obviously a couple hundred receiving yards. So I think he's going to finish the year with 1,300 rushing yards and over 1,500 scrimmage yards total. Okay, I am incredibly intrigued to see how Shane Steichen uses Jonathan Taylor because he didn't really get to use him last year. Jonathan Taylor was holding out, and when he wasn't holding out, he was hurt. So we haven't really even seen what Jonathan Taylor is going to look like in the Shane Steichen offense. And I am excited to get a taste of what that's going to look like as we get into this upcoming Colts season. Now, when I say that I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to have a big year and he's going to have 1,300 rushing yards and 1,500 total yards from scrimmage, I'm going to assume that you think that that means that he's going to score a bunch of touchdowns. This is where my take kind of goes a little haywire. As many yards as Jonathan Taylor is going to rack up this year, because he's going to get the ball a lot, I don't think that the touchdown number for Jonathan Taylor is going to be very high. Okay, 1,300 rushing yards, and I think he's only going to finish with somewhere around 8 touchdowns this year. He might get to 10. I would honestly be surprised if he got to 10 touchdowns on the year. Because where do running backs capitalize the most? Where do running backs have the most opportunity to run the ball into the end zone? In the red zone. Okay, 60-yard touchdown runs just don't happen very often in the NFL. Okay, and, NFL teams talk about the importance of the running back position inside the 25. Having, a bell cow you can turn around, hand it off to at the 2-yard line and trust that they're going to get in. I don't think that Jonathan Taylor is going to play that role this year for the Colts. In the red zone, I believe that the Indianapolis Colts are going to let Anthony Richardson. I believe that Anthony Richardson is going to be the quote-unquote goal line back. Okay, they're going to give the ball to Anthony Richardson inside the red zone, especially tight in the red zone, inside the 5-yard line, because talk to any coach about running the football. It's all about numbers. Okay, if you have a numbers advantage, you are more than likely going to be successful in your endeavor to run the football. And when you run the quarterback, you get an extra blocker. You do. Right? Because we know if you hand it off to the running back, you're essentially playing 10 on 11 because, the quarterback's not going to run out and block. It's not going to happen. Okay, but if you let the quarterback run the ball, then your halfback, your running back, Jonathan Taylor, can then be the lead blocker, right? So it gives you just an extra blocker, which is really nice to have when, you're down on the 3-yard line and everyone's packed in tight. It's nice to have that extra blocker. So in the red zone, I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson get the bulk of those carries. Okay, that's part of why, if you drafted Jonathan Taylor on your fantasy team, I wouldn't have done it because touchdowns in fantasy football are worth 6 points. And I just don't think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be the touchdown guy for the Colts this year. I think it's going to be Anthony Richardson when they get in tight. But before the Colts get into the red zone, before the Colts get down, inside the 5-yard line, we're going to see a lot of Jonathan Taylor, whether that's screen passes or turning around and handing him the football. I think we're going to see a lot of him. I think he's going to have a good year this year. I'm excited to see him. Hopefully he can stay healthy, right? That's always the concern with a guy like Jonathan Taylor. You need them to stay healthy. Okay? So we'll see. Once again, the take for you. Jonathan Taylor, 1,300 rushing yards, 1,500 yards from scrimmage with only 8 touchdowns because I think that Anthony Richardson's going to be that go-to guy on the goal line. If you've missed my other takes heading into the Colts season, I've got Anthony Richardson at a 3-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio. Okay, that's also part of why I have Jonathan Taylor's touchdowns a little bit lower, right? If Anthony Richardson's going to score 38 touchdowns this year, someone's numbers have to go down. And I think that guy's going to be Jonathan Taylor because, once again, Anthony Richardson's going to be that guy down by the goal line. Yesterday, I said Michael Pittman Jr. will not lead the Colts in receiving yards. Got 2 more takes coming for you this week. And speaking of this week, it's only Wednesday, and I just can't stop thinking about Sunday. I really can't. I was sitting down last night, at my computer, prepping through everything. And I was like, I wish it was Friday. Because, Friday, I could just do a big game preview, talk about all the different aspects of the game that I'm excited to watch, keys, all that great stuff. Okay? And I just, oh, man. I can't wait for Sunday. And as I was sitting on my couch last night, I had Zach Hicks on the show yesterday at 11. Today, Tony East is coming on at 11 to talk about the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark and all that good stuff. But yesterday, I had Zach Hicks on, and we were talking about players that were excited / interested in seeing how they play on Sunday. And I was like, I got to talk about this. And as I was sitting down and I was thinking about this Colts game coming up on Sunday, there are 3 players that I am intrigued by. There are 3 players that I have circled where it's like, I know I'm going to be watching how this guy plays football on Sunday in the Colts' first game of the year. And I think one of the guys that's on everybody's list for guys that they want to see how they perform on Sunday for the Colts is Nick Cross. Nick Cross is going to be the starting safety alongside Julian Blackmon, who's, apparently the best safety in the NFL now, based off of all the reports we've gotten coming out of training camp. But Nick Cross is going to be vital to this team's success this year, which I don't think makes anyone feel good given the lack of production that he's shown us in his first 2 years in the league. But I'm going to go glass half full here, but he was good in the preseason. He was. Okay, tackled well, did a good job staying over the top, all those things. But obviously, the regular season is a completely different animal, specifically playing against a Houston Texans team that has a lot of talent at receiver and a guy that was great at quarterback last year. He had a top 10 quarterback season last year. CJ Stroud did. It's a little different than playing against the second string guys from Cincinnati. Okay. It's just a little bit different. So I think everyone has him circled. I think that if he plays well, Nick Cross, then the Colts win. I really think it's that simple. I think that the Colts are going to figure out ways to score points just because I have faith in Shane Steichen. The question is, how's the defense going to look? And if Nick Cross plays well, that likely means that the Colts limited big plays from Houston. And look, let's be honest here about this secondary room for the Colts. The cornerbacks aren't very good. They aren't. Okay, you got 7th round pick Jalen Jones, and you got 2nd round pick can't stay healthy Juju Brents. So the safeties, Julian Blackmon and Nick Cross, are going to have to pick up the slack. Okay, that means Nick Cross has to play well because I don't trust these corners against the likes of Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. I don't. But their lives will be made a lot easier if Leatu Latu plays well. I think Leatu Latu is going to be a good player. I feel bad for him, though, because I don't think he's going to play very well on Sunday. I don't. He has a tough assignment for his first game in the NFL. Laramie Tunsil is one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. That is a tough first matchup for a rookie in Leatu Latu. I'm very intrigued to see where they line him up at. Like, do they let him go one-on-one with Tunsil? Do they move him off of Tunsil? How do they kind of manage all of that? Because, now, like I said, I guess that's a really tough first matchup for a guy in Leatu Latu that people are excited about. Now, if he makes an impact on Sunday against Laramie Tunsil, like, that is a spectacular sign for things to come down the road with him. Because, once again, Laramie Tunsil is one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. But I got to be honest, I'm not expecting much from him, but I am intrigued to see how he looks going up against one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. The last guy that I am intrigued to see is Anthony Gould. Anthony Gould is incredible. That's a bit much. Anthony Gould is incredibly important. How's that? That's much better. He is incredibly important. Like, Jonathan, why is, a fourth round pick out of Oregon State that's going to be a backup? Like, why is he important? Well, he's important for two reasons. One, I don't think Josh Downs is going to play on Sunday. I would be surprised if he did. So I expect to see Anthony Gould take some snaps at wide receiver, explosive, fast. Like, we know this. Okay, the 4.3 speed has been greatly advertised on my show. Okay, so I think he's going to take some snaps at receiver. So obviously he'll have opportunities to impact the game on the offensive side of the ball. More importantly, though, the area where he's going to have perhaps his biggest impact, not just in this game, but on the season, is in returning kicks. Okay, like, we've talked about the new rules. Okay, we watched it happen in the preseason. Teams trying not to show how they're going to do everything in terms of the new kickoff rules and all those things. But Anthony Gould is going to have an opportunity to make big plays on kickoff returns and punt returns. And I think it's going to be important for the Colts. Like, that special teams phase of the game is incredibly important. That's something that can separate teams. Like, when I think about the New England Patriots and their dynasty, like, yes, Tom Brady was great. Yes, Bill Belichick and those defenses were great. But their special teams was always up to snuff. Their special teams was always very well put together, and it won them some games during that dynasty run. And so I think special teams are very important, especially now that kickoff returns are a thing. And I think it's important for this Colts team with a young quarterback to have good field position. Now, field position is always important. It will always be important, but having good field position, when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, who can be a little up and down, who's not going to be incredibly consistent, when you have a quarterback like that, it's much easier to score, especially when you only have to go, 60 yards as opposed to 75 or whatever it is. So I am excited to see how this Colts, handles the new special teams rules, and I'm excited to see how Anthony Gould impacts the game in that kickoff return spot. Coming up, top of the hour, 11 o'clock, Tony East set to join me. Can't wait to have him on, man. He does such a good job covering the Fever and the Pacers. So mainly going to talk Fever. Probably going to ask him about the TJ McConnell contract as well, because he signed an extension with the Pacers over the weekend. Can't wait to talk to Tony about that at the top of the hour. When we come back, though, here in 4 minutes, Final Five Takes, NFL edition, continues on the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. I know you heard that promo. Football tomorrow night. Chiefs, Ravens. You can listen to the game right here on Indy's Sports Ticket. I believe that game kicks off at like 8:20. So late. Ugh. It's the one thing I don't like about the Eastern time zone. Oh, man. All these late kicks, man. It's all right, though. It's all good. I will survive. Speaking of surviving, Final Five Takes, NFL edition, involves a quarterback today that just had to survive last year. Bryce Young is going to be way better this year. I believe that Bryce Young has been unfairly evaluated from last year to this year. Okay, Bryce Young was obviously the number one overall pick. The Carolina Panthers gave up a lot to acquire him. Sort of terrible last year. He only completed 60% of his passes. He only threw for 2,800 yards. He threw only 11 touchdowns, and he threw 10 interceptions on his way to a 2-14 record as the starter of the Carolina Panthers. And I'm here to tell you that he's going to be much better this year. Much, much better. When we look at the recipe of helping young quarterbacks, you need three things. You need a good offensive line, you need a good head coach, and you need weapons. That's part of why I'm optimistic about Anthony Richardson this year. I think that the Colts check all three of those boxes. Good coach in Shane Steichen. Everyone keeps telling me that this offensive line is going to be dominant this year, and they've got a decent amount of weapons. Is it the best weapons cast in the NFL? Of course not, but pretty good, solid, pretty solid. But when we look at Bryce Young and the situation that he was thrown into last year, that was not the case. Nothing, a part of this Carolina Panthers organization helped Bryce Young last year. He was coached by the first coach that got fired in the NFL last year, Frank Reich. He got fired like 8 games into the season. So Bryce Young spends the first 8 games being coached by the worst coach in the NFL, and then he's being coached by coordinators from that moment forward. That's not ideal for a young rookie quarterback. Bryce Young also got sacked 62 times last year in 16 games. If he played a 17th, he would have been sacked more than any other quarterback in the NFL. That's not ideal for a young rookie quarterback. That Panthers offensive line was one of the worst. It was the worst in the NFL. It was horrendously bad. Okay, they couldn't block anything at all. Okay, Bryce Young's best wide receiver last year was 34-year-old Adam Thielen. That's not great. I don't know about you, but I like it when my best receiver's like 26, 20, 24 even. Young, fast, athletic, Adam Thielen. Great in Minnesota, not great in Carolina. Okay, and look, I'm not a genius. I think that I know a lot, but I wouldn't say that I'm a genius. But if you surround a rookie quarterback with a bad head coach, a bad offensive line, and no weapons, they aren't going to be good. I don't care who it is. You could have taken Patrick Mahomes last year, like fully developed Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, and put him on that Carolina Panthers roster. And guess what? They wouldn't have made the playoffs, even though Patrick Mahomes is hands down the best quarterback in the NFL, may even wind up being the best quarterback ever. If you put him on that Carolina Panthers roster, they would have been terrible because that Carolina Panthers roster was the worst roster in the NFL last year with a horrendously bad head coach. Like, of course Bryce Young stunk. He wasn't surrounded by anything worthwhile. But things are slightly different this year. Okay, Bryce Young has a new head coach this year, Dave Canales, who was most recently the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, I don't know anything about Dave Canales, but I can tell you this. He can't be worse than Frank Reich. I know that. I know that Canales has had success with quarterbacks previously. In 2020, he was the Seahawks passing game coordinator. That was Russell Wilson's best year in Seattle. He was the Seahawks passing game coordinator in 2022 as well, the year that he made Geno Smith looked like a starting NFL quarterback. Geno Smith's best year of his career so far. Okay, last year, Dave goes to Tampa Bay, offensive coordinator. Baker Mayfield, run out of Cleveland. The Panthers take him, and he was bad with the Panthers, and then he got traded to the Rams, and he had like a cool Monday Night Football game. But outside of that, it looked like Baker Mayfield was on his way out of the league. He's a free agent. Ends up in Tampa Bay, wins the starting job, and Dave Canales helps Baker Mayfield put together the best year of his career. Canales has had success with quarterbacks, clearly. He's going to do some good, positive things to help Bryce Young be better this year. And once again, he can't be worse than Frank Reich was last year. It's simply not possible. So Bryce Young has an upgrade now at head coach. Personnel-wise, things are going to be better this year. Panthers went out. They signed 2 new offensive guards that should start immediately. Now, look, when it comes to pass protection, you want great offensive tackles. That's what you want. But when you're the Carolina Panthers and you're terrible, you'll take what you can get. Bringing in anyone new would have been an upgrade. Okay, and look, they upgraded 2 spots on the interior of the offensive line. Should help with the run game. Okay, so he's going to be better this year because they upgraded 2 spots on the offensive line. And then we look at the weapons. They spent a first-round pick, the Panthers did, on a wide receiver in Xavier Legette, who is a physical freak coming out of South Carolina. He's also a great interview. If you see any of his clips, you should totally watch him. He's got a unique voice, to say the least. They signed wide receiver Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh. Look, he's 28. Deontay Johnson didn't have a great year last year, but then again, Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph were his quarterbacks, so kind of hard to judge that, but he's still an upgrade from 34-year-old Adam Thielen. They also drafted Jonathan Brooks out of Texas, who should be a good running back. Not a huge upgrade, but they do have some weapons now outside of 34-year-old Adam Thielen, who is now no longer Bryce Young's best receiver, which is a good thing. Okay? I believe it was unfair to grade Bryce Young at all last year because everything around him was so terrible. This is the first year we're actually going to get to see if Bryce Young is any good. He's got a much more capable head coach, better weapons, better offensive line. Hopefully he won't be running for his life all year. He won't have to deal with bad coaching, and his best receiver won't be 34 years old. Okay? This is the first year we're going to get to see if Bryce Young is good or not, and I think we're going to walk away from this season thinking that Bryce Young is capable of being a starting quarterback in the NFL. Speaking of being capable and being great and all of those things, I have to talk about the Indiana Fever, who after last night have now officially clinched a WNBA playoff berth, first time since 2019. It's impressive what Caitlin Clark has done in her rookie season. Okay, Tony East, top of the hour, 30 minutes away. He's going to join me. We're going to talk Fever. Probably touch on the TJ McConnell extension with the Pacers as well, but it's predominantly going to be Indiana Fever conversation. As of right now, the Indiana Fever are holding on to the 6th seed in the WNBA. It's like, Jonathan, do they have any chance of the 5 seed? The answer is no. They are 3 games back of the Seattle Storm. If the Storm had lost last night, I would have given the Fever a long shot chance, but being 3 games back with, this many games left, probably not going to happen. Okay, the Indiana Fever are going to hopefully keep the 6th seed. They're playing tonight at 7 o'clock at home against the Los Angeles Sparks, the worst team in the league. They're, new star Cameron Brink, number 2 overall pick in this year's draft. She, tore her ACL. Now the Sparks are the worst team in the WNBA with a record of 7-25. Okay, so the Fever should win again tonight. Then again, we've seen them lose to some of the worst teams in the WNBA already this season. Okay, and so when I sit back and I look at the Fever and I look at the playoffs, because those are quickly approaching, Fever are going to wind up with either the 6 or the 7 seed. Okay, so now we have to turn our attention to the top of the WNBA to figure out who are they going to play? Who do we want for the Fever to play? Right? Those are the questions that are now going to cloud our minds continuously. So, was doing some research last night. So, the New York Liberty, they are the 1 seed with a 3-game lead over the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx, who record-wise are tied for the 2 seed. But the Sun have the tiebreaker for the year already clinched. So the Liberty of New York, they're going to be the 1 seed. They're going to probably be the favorite to win the WNBA Finals, as they should be. They're really good. Okay. When we look at the Connecticut Sun and the Minnesota Lynx, we want for the Fever to play the Sun, not the Lynx. Okay. They are different in terms of how they're made, in terms of their roster structure. And I think that the way that the Sun are built just better favors the Fever than how the Lynx are. So the Connecticut Sun, they're obviously a good team. They wouldn't be the 2 seed if they weren't. But when you look at them, they don't have a star. They're just incredibly deep. And playoffs are not about depth. Playoffs are about stars when it comes to basketball. And the Connecticut Sun don't have a star. Once again, they're incredibly deep. They've got 6 players that average double figures, but none of them average more than 15 points a game. There is no star. There is no, hey guys, there's 2 minutes left in the game. We haven't scored in, 2 minutes. We need a bucket. Here you go, so-and-so. The Connecticut Sun do not have that. And I think that bodes well in the Fever's favor, because the Indiana Fever have 3 stars at least. Maybe you could say no, they only have 2. That's fine. Either way, they have more stars than the Sun do. Obviously, the Fever are led by Caitlin Clark. I would argue that Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell are stars as well. Okay, so when it comes, look, it's such an advantage to have the best player in the series. And if the Fever play the Sun, then they will have the best player in the series in Caitlin Clark. Meanwhile, if they play against the Minnesota Lynx, which is what I think that the WNBA wants, because the Minnesota Lynx head coach was the Olympic head coach, and there's drama there, and the conversation around the series would be a lot of fun. But the Fever don't want to play the Lynx, because the Lynx definitely have a star in, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Napheesa Collier. She is second in MVP odds right now. Okay, when the Fever beat the Lynx earlier in the season, she did not play. That's part of why the Indiana Fever were able to win that game. In the 28 games that she's played this year, Collier is averaging 20 points and 10 rebounds a game. She is a bona fide superstar that the Fever simply do not want to deal with. They don't want any part of her because she's dominant on the block. She rebounds. She does all those things. The Fever would much prefer to play the Connecticut Sun because, as we all know, in the world of basketball, the playoffs, it's not about depth. It's about stars. And the Sun don't have anyone on their team at the same level of Napheesa Collier of the Lynx, and the Connecticut Sun don't have anyone on their team at the same level as Caitlin Clark. If the Indiana Fever play the Connecticut Sun, they'll have the best player in the series, and that is always a major advantage. It always, always, always is. So, we're pulling for the Fever to wind up playing against the Sun. I don't care if that means that the Fever are the 6th seed or if they're the 7th seed. I just want to see them play against the Connecticut Sun because that gives them their best chance at advancing past the first round, which would be great. Give me all the WNBA playoff action here in Indy. Give me more Caitlin Clark. This year filled with watching her play has been nothing short of fun and spectacular. It's been an absolute blast watching her play. And I just don't want for the run to end. I want to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball for as long as possible. That way, those Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday nights when there's no NFL football on, no college football on, I can turn the TV on and watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. That's what I want. Is it selfish of me? Sure. I don't really care, though. I want to see her play. Once again, Tony East joining me, top of the hour, 11 o'clock, 25 minutes away, to discuss the Fever, what they're going to look like in the playoffs, who they want to play, all those things. Tony East joining me, top of the hour, 11 o'clock, to talk about that. Now, as I was doing some Colts research last night, I stumbled across an article that just continues to show the difference between Chris Ballard and the rest of the general managers in the NFL, and I had to share it with you. I'm going to share it with you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket, set to be joined by the one and only Tony East, major friend of the program. Love having Tony on. We're going to talk Indiana Fever, a lot of Indiana Fever. Okay, playoffs quickly approaching. The end of the WNBA season is like 2 weeks away. You know, will we care when the end of the season happens because football's already started? I don't know. I would assume probably not. But at the same time, hey, who knows? Caitlin Clark is an absolute lightning rod. Okay, like I have to talk about her because everything that she does makes the news. Everything said about her makes the news. It's incredible. Okay, people's infatuation with her is pretty cool. Honestly, it really is. And Chris Ballard's infatuation with building through the draft and not spending money in free agency makes no sense whatsoever. Put your money where your mouth is. Popular saying, everyone knows what it means. It means just, back up whatever it is that you claim. Okay? You have to back up what you say or else people stop believing you. And you're labeled as a liar, and that's not good. You want people to trust you. Therefore, you have to back up the things that you say. You have to follow through on what you say. Like, that matters to people. It matters to me. I'm sure it matters to you. If you had someone who kept, telling you that they were going to, do whatever. For example, Dan made a bet with some guy in New York. I don't even remember his name. I just know he works for Outkick. From my understanding, the guy hasn't paid up yet. So I'm willing to bet that Dan won't make another bet with the dude. Okay? Like, you have to follow up on what you say. It is important. If I tell my wife, that I love her and that she's super important to me, but then I don't take her out for our anniversary, which is less than a week away, pretty crazy, and I never spend time with her, okay, and I come home from work and I ignore her and I just sit on the couch and I just watch football and worry about my show, eventually she's going to think that I don't love her, no matter how much I say it, because actions are important. You have to back up what you say. If Mike Woodson and the Indiana University Athletic Department told you that they expected to make Final Fours and to win national titles and to hang banners and how that was the goal, but they didn't recruit the portal and they didn't give out big NIL deals, then you wouldn't believe them. You would probably be incredibly frustrated. You sit there and be like, you're telling me that we're going to do all these things, but then you're not doing the actions necessary to follow through. You have to follow through on your actions. Every team, high school, middle school, pee-wee football, upward basketball leagues, whatever, men's basketball leagues, the NBA, the NFL, all these teams, every level, every sport talks about winning. But the ones that actually want to win, and the teams that oftentimes do win, often make moves to back that up. The Rams, for example, have a plethora of moves throughout their recent history that backs up their claim that they want to win games. Like, what did they do in order to win, the Super Bowl that they won, 3 years ago now? They traded away their future, a lot of first-round draft picks for Matthew Stafford. Okay, they gave up more draft picks for Jalen Ramsey. Okay, after having a horrendously bad secondary last year, what the Rams do this year? They went into the free agent market and they signed a bunch of better secondary players. That way their secondary is better this year and they don't get torched by Jared Goff again, okay? They are backing up their claim that they want to win by going out and addressing their weaknesses. And when I look around the NFL and I look at the teams doing this, because every team says that they want to win, every team says that they want to make the playoffs and they want to win their division and they want to win a Super Bowl and all those things. I look around and I see Ron Carthen, the Titans general manager, backing up his claim. Okay, because once again, every team claims that they want to win a Super Bowl and that they want to win games and all those things. Okay, and Ron Carthen of the Tennessee Titans, I think more than anyone, has backed up that claim this offseason. Okay, at the press conference, after finalizing his Tennessee Titans 53-man roster, he said this, quote, "I will never shy away from acknowledging that I have unapologetically high expectations for the football team and every aspect of the Titans organizations. Okay? Our vision is not simply to produce more wins than losses. It is to regularly compete for championships. Now, every team in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever, they have all said a statement similar to that. And then the question is, like, do you back it up? The Tennessee Titans spent $228 million this offseason on players. $228 million. That is more than anyone else by far. They went 6-11 last year. They sat back, they looked at their roster, they looked at how they were doing things, and they realized that they needed to change. Ron Carthon sat back. He was like, man, I'm going to take heat for firing Mike Vrabel, but the style of football that Mike Vrabel wants to play is outdated. So I'm going to fire him, and I'm going to bring in Brian Callahan, young, offensive-minded, head coach that's hopefully going to help Will Levis. And in addition to getting rid of Mike Vrabel, I'm going to get rid of Derrick Henry as well. I'm going to let him walk. I'm going to let him go wherever he wants. Okay? The Titans sat back, they looked at their operation, and they realized that what they were doing wasn't working. This run-heavy offense just wasn't working. In an NFL where throwing the ball, the ability to pass the football is king. That is how you win games now. The Titans sat back. They saw that they went 6-11 last year. They saw that Mike Vrabel probably wasn't the guy to help develop Will Levis into a good quarterback, so they got rid of him. They saw that they needed to make changes, not only on the coaching staff, but also on their roster, so they did. It's impressive. It's nice. It's like change is not an easy thing. Whenever you change anything, you are in essence admitting that you are wrong. And that is an incredibly hard thing to do because we are a prideful society that doesn't like to admit that we're wrong. But Ron Carthon did. He said, hey, I'm building this team the wrong way. This guy that I have coaching the team, we need a change, even though Mike Vrabel is known as one of the best coaches in the NFL. We need to make a change. And so he did. And he spent $228 million to make that change. Meanwhile, Chris Ballard doesn't want to change a thing. Doesn't want to change a thing. Chris Ballard has watched this Colts defense finish 28th in points allowed per game the last 2 years. And he hasn't changed a thing. He didn't make any upgrades, didn't make any trades. The biggest weakness of the defense this year was clearly the secondary. Didn't want to spend that 15th overall pick on, a corner. He could have taken whoever he wanted. But no, he decided to add another defensive lineman, which may work out in the long run. All signs point to Laiatu Latu being good, but drafting a defensive lineman in the first round when he already had plenty of them just speaks to the fact that Chris Ballard refuses to make any sort of changes in his approach, even though he's never won a division. The Colts haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. Something has to change with Chris Ballard. Something does. And maybe it doesn't need to be his drafting philosophy. Maybe he just needs to change the way that he spends money. He does. He hasn't spent the money to bring in proven commodities to help this defense that's been horrendously bad these last 2 years. Once again, 28th in the NFL the last 2 years in points per game allowed. That's bad. That's really bad. Okay, and we can talk about Anthony Richardson and how excited we are. And, I love Shane Steichen. I'm going to sing his praises, hopefully for a really long time, because I think he's a really good head coach. But we can sit here, we can talk about the offense, we can talk about Anthony Richardson expectations and how good we think Jonathan Taylor's going to be and all those things. We can sit around and we can talk about that. We can chat it up. But if this defense that the Colts have is once again 28th in points per game allowed, it doesn't matter how good Anthony Richardson is. It won't matter, how good Jonathan Taylor is, or if he stays healthy, or if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, or if Adonai Mitchell is awesome, or whatever it is. Okay, like Chris Ballard continues to make the same mistake with this lack of willingness to go out and bring in proven commodities, proven players that we all know can come in and contribute immediately. That's what the Colts needed this offseason, and Chris Ballard couldn't do it, wouldn't do it for whatever reason. And look, the NFL season starts tomorrow night. I can't wait. We're going to run the game right here on Indy Sports Ticket. So if you're driving around, your daughter has a ballet recital, your kid has little league practice, whatever it is, it's like, man, really wish I could watch the game right now. Just flip it right here, Indy Sports Ticket, 14:30 a.m. and you can listen to it. But the NFL season is about to start. And the AFC South is incredibly intriguing. I think it's the most interesting division in the NFL. A lot of people love Houston. I'm off Houston, 8-9. I like Jacksonville. Sue me. But there are major question marks around the Titans and the Colts. And it's not going to be hard to figure out why whoever is better is better. Okay, if the Colts finish this year better than the Titans, it will be because Anthony Richardson figured things out and he looks like a guy that can play quarterback. If the Titans finish in front of the Colts this year, it'll likely be because Will Levis figured some things out. But it'll also be because the Tennessee Titans went out this offseason and they brought in players that can play. Okay, they brought in proven commodities that are going to be able to step in and immediately help. Meanwhile, when we look at the Colts, maybe Nick Cross will be good. Maybe Jalen Jones will be good. Maybe Juju Brents will be good. There's a lot of maybes. Whereas when I look at that Titans roster, there's a lot of, yeah, I know that guy can play. There's a lot of that. So we'll see which method of roster building wins out. If I'd lean one way or the other, though, I would lean towards the Titans and their way of doing things. But I don't believe in Will Levis, so we'll kind of see how that goes. I saw this question on Twitter yesterday, real quick before I go to break. Tony East set to join me in the next segment to talk Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, WNBA playoffs, all those fun things. I'll probably ask him about the TJ McConnell extension as well, because the best backup point guard in the NBA is staying in Indianapolis. But I saw this question. I think the answer is pretty easy, but I don't know. It got a lot of engagement, so I'm curious. For all you golf fans out there, Jon Rahm obviously left the PGA Tour to go join LIV. Meanwhile, good old Scottie Scheffler stayed. And Scottie Scheffler was he has been hands down, the most successful golfer this year. Okay, he's won, it feels like every tournament. Okay. But he's only made $62 million this year. That's still a lot of money. And he's won all these things. He's got trophies. He's got another green jacket, all those things. It's really cool. But Jon Rahm, who left and went to LIV, he made $218 million this year. And he didn't win jack squat. So who would you rather be? Seriously, who would you rather be? Would you rather be Scottie Scheffler, make $62 million this year, win another Masters, win all these different tournaments, all of that kind of stuff? Or would you rather be Jon Rahm? Not win anything, be irrelevant, but make $218 million this year. I would rather be Jon Rahm, straight up. No doubt in my mind. I would much rather make, 3 times the amount of money and walk around and not have people bother me. That sounds pretty freaking great. But I don't know. Let me know. Follow me on Twitter at _ Jonathan Smith. Let me know, would you rather be Jon Rahm or Scottie Scheffler? Coming up, 5 minutes, Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He's also a beat writer for the Indiana Fever. He is set to join me. We're going to talk Fever, the upcoming, WNBA playoffs, the fact that the Fever clinched a playoff spot for the first time in 5 years last night. They played a night, 7 o'clock at Gainbridge Fieldhouse against the Los Angeles Sparks. Who do we want the Fever to play in the playoffs? All those types of questions will be answered when we come back here in about 5 minutes here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket. Tony East coming your way next.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great week so far. It's Wednesday, not Tuesday, which I have to continue to tell myself. Joining me now, Tony East of Locked On Pacers, also a beat writer covering your Indiana Fever. Tony, what's going on, man?
A lot. The Pacers Fever busy. The NBA season starts this month somehow. It's crazy.
That's right. The NBA season does start this month. Jeez, that's
the preseason in late September.
That's nuts. Okay, but
here.
Speaking of the NBA and the Pacers and preseason and everything started, they extended the best backup point guard in the NBA in TJ McConnell. What were your thoughts on the extension?
Yeah, to me, the thing, I actually predicted that this would not happen, not because of anything to do with McConnell specifically. He's very good, and they chose to keep him because he's very good. But because after they re-signed Toppin, re-signed Siakam, kept Nembhard, I thought, man, I don't know if they can afford all this, right? Because now next year it's going to be really tight with Miles Turner, and that's the obvious follow-up question. But the counterpoint is, one, now that we know the contract details, I mean, they had to do this. Right? Like, to have the last year have a team option and the third year have a partial guarantee, so it's only like $26 million of guaranteed money on the extension is crazy good value for the best backup point guard in the NBA. And to me, the case for extending McConnell the whole time has been that not only is he good, like we've already said, but he can keep the Pacers playing the same style, right? Like when Tyrese Haliburton comes out, McConnell can play up-tempo and create and get to the rim, and he's like this crazy ISO scorer somehow, despite being my height. Like, it's ridiculous, but it worked in the playoffs too. He upped his scoring in the postseason, his best playoffs by far. Like, it was really impressive. And so the fact that they're able to not have to change the way they play when Haliburton comes out, right? The Nuggets have dealt with this for forever. When Jokic comes out of the game, their backup center can't do that stuff, right? Which is not a problem for their centers. No center can do that. But it makes it hard for their bench to ever work. Their bench always sucks. And the Pacers bench was awesome last year behind Haliburton. I think that was the argument for keeping McConnell. So they'll have to figure out how to open money space for Miles Turner if they want to keep him. If not, it's going to be a very interesting year of how they balance their roster. But with how much team friendliness they got on the back end, I think you had to do this, and it's a good deal. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a great point on how they're able to continue playing the same style, and the fact that TJ McConnell is like 6'3" and he scores from inside 4 feet as well as anyone in the NBA is just absurd.
He wishes he was 6'3". He is not 6'3".
Fair enough. Joined by Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, also writes and covers the Indiana Fever, who are playoff bound for the first time since 2019. I don't think we're surprised that the Fever are making the playoffs, but are you surprised that the Fever are probably going to be over 500 heading into the playoffs? Is that surprising to you at all?
Yeah, for first time since 2016 with Catchings in her final season. I mean, it's crazy. And yeah, I actually am a little surprised. I thought they could make the playoffs this year. I actually predicted they'd finish 8th, which is a playoff spot. And they started 1-8, and I thought, maybe not. But I thought that their schedule was holding them back. So I thought they'd finish like 16 wins, maybe 16-24. And I actually think that win total is going to be about what it takes to get the 8th seed. I think we're going to blow past that. They already have 17. They have a couple more easy games, 6 of their last 8 at home, 6 in a row coming up at home with some tough opponents at the back of it. But still, like, they could easily get to 20 or 21. They play the Sparks tonight. They have another dream game. They play the Mystics twice, who aren't very good, although the Mystics maybe are pushing for the 8th seed now, which is crazy. Well, it's totally reasonable they could get to 20 or 21 wins, which after starting 1-8 is remarkable. But they had a stretch where all their stars figured out how to play together. They had a stretch where Kelsey Mitchell, which is still ongoing, is like a top 10 player in the league. Caitlin is a whole shot to the Olympic break. Lexi Hall's making threes. Everything's working. They're all playing well, and it's really remarkable given how bad they were to start the season and really how poor they've been for the last 8 years. 2016, Paul George was still in the Pacers. Like, this is a long time in sports terms.
It really is. And it's, a lot of it, I would say most of it, is because of Caitlin Clark, who is improved dramatically from the start of the year till now. I still remember
Yes.
when she had 10 turnovers against the Liberty in her first game. It was ugly. It was bad, but she's gotten better throughout the course of the year. And where do you think she has improved the most?
That is a good question. I mean, early in the season, it just felt like she was kind of overwhelmed by the size and speed of defenses. She would pick up her dribble too much. She couldn't find those pocket passes that were so easily there for her at Iowa. Team defended so bad they couldn't get in transition, so their offense never looked like it was clicking. But once her and Aaliyah Boston got connected, that opened up a few avenues for her to kind of do her thing. I think her whole game just kind of exploded once one thing that she could go to all the time opened up, and then she could really explore the space. And that's what changed her whole season, right? Is when Boston got going early. And I think that was huge for Caitlin. She figured out, okay, if I keep my dribble, this pass will be there. Okay, if I go towards the rim, this pass will be there. And then, oh, wait, if I go towards the rim now, this shot's there. And then, oh, wait, I can circle out and kick it to the – it all kept ballooning from there, like keeping her dribble alive and getting a little more space to clinch angles. That was a big part of it. The other part of it is the Fever as a team really hammering in their transition principles has been huge. Like they run to the corners hard and they have all this space and they are just it's like the Pacers. They're so insane in the open floor, right? Like the second they get a stop, you got to be, if you're on defense and your head's not up, they're going to score, right? And so that has changed everything, and that their defense is still not great, but it was like worst ever levels for the first couple weeks of the season, and now it's just like normal bad, and that's good enough for them to get in transition, enough to just beat anybody. So I think her and the team really gelling in transition has been huge, and I think her connection with Aaliyah changed the way she was guarded and the way she found her spots in the pros, and that's kind of expanded out slowly over the season into her being able to pretty much get whatever shot she wants now, because she looks terrific, and the way she's setting up players looks terrific.
Joined by Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. How much of the improvement on defense goes to Christy Sides?
Yeah, that's her thing, right? Like, and that's Lynn Dunn's thing too. And Lynn Dunn was the coach of the Fever, which newer fans need to know that she was like a great coach. She was the coach of the only Fever championship team. Her thing was defense, right? And then she got hired as GM a few years ago, and I remember her press conference. She said, "We're going to defend. We're going to be the best defending team." And she hired Christy Sides, who was the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Dream, and the Dream were a great defensive team, and they want to defend, right? And Christy Sides is joking that they're going to defend the second they walk in the gym for training camp. Players are going to hate it. It's super funny. And then they didn't. They didn't defend at all to start the season, and it's like, what's going on here? And clearly her offense works. They're like the best scoring team in the league for the last 2 months. But yeah, she is a defensive coach, and finally, sometimes you roll your eyes when coaches talk about needing to practice things because it's pro athletes, but every time she would say, "We just need a day to practice our shell defense," every time they'd actually have a practice, they would defend really well for the next couple of games after it. So it's like, okay, maybe there's truth to just hammering home these concepts. And now after they had the Olympic break, they've had a few rough defensive nights. Dallas, they won that game recently, but they gave up over 90 points. But it's looked better and more cohesive, and not like they're just have no chance of getting a stop for long stretches of games. If you watch Fever early in the season, it was just like, oh boy, it's just they don't have a chance to catch up. Once they fall down behind by 10, it's over. Now that's not the case anymore, and I think Christy Sides deserves a ton of credit for that because they have the same team, right? That's something about the W that's so unique is there's very rarely in-season trades of actual significance or importance. They've had the same team all year, so any growth comes down to player growth and coaching growth, and I think Sides deserves a lot of credit on both ends. As do the players, though. It goes both ways in all fronts.
Totally agree. Once again, joined by Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, and writes and covers the Indiana Fever. So Aaliyah Boston had a stretch earlier in the season where she was awesome, and it was kind of around the time that her and Caitlin Clark kind of meshed and figured out how to play together. Is that what you think's happening with Kelsey Mitchell right now, where she's just kind of learned how to play alongside Caitlin Clark, or is it Kelsey Mitchell's just awesome and she shoots the crap out of the ball? She's just shooting it really well right now.
Yeah, she has always been really good, to be clear. I do think that the Caitlin factor is really unique here. So Kelsey had a stretch probably every season, like not this long. Like we're almost at like 20 games of this right now with Kelsey Mitchell. But she always had like a 5 to 10 game stretch every year for her. We're like, oh my God, you can't guard this girl. And that's why she made an all-star team before Caitlin, right? Obviously, she's really good. But this stretch has been ridiculous since mid-June, early July, whenever you want to start it. And the thing that's different now is opposing teams can't put their best defender on Kelsey Mitchell because if they do that, that person is not on Caitlin, and that does not seem like a good idea, right? Some teams have tried it. That doesn't work. And now Lexi Hall's making shots too, and Alyssa Smith is figuring out where she can attack all the spaces. So it's like no matter what perimeter defender you're trying to put on somebody, someone's going to have a huge advantage. And Kelsey Mitchell has been really good at taking advantage of her new opportunities and more spacing. Like she even said this at media day. I was like, what do you think Caitlin's going to add to this team? She put her hands really close together, and she's like, our spacing used to be like this. And then she put her hands out as far as she could, and she said, now it's going to be like this. And that was spot on, right? Their spacing is crazy. She's so fast with the ball that she can get to the rim. And she's a good shooter. She's always been good. She's always had this peak, right? In 2019, she had set the W record for threes in one game, right? She's always been pretty damn good. But right now is her best stretch ever. And I think the fact that she can't be guarded by other team's best players reasonably, and there's a ton of spacing, which are both kind of Caitlin doing things, has allowed her to just dominate every night. She's been unbelievable for the last 2 months.
She really has. She's been incredible. And, look, I'm sure that whenever you get asked to talk about the Fever, you're always asked about the Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark thing. Obviously, they played on Friday night, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and I'm like, it's so incredibly apparent. It's abundantly clear that Caitlin Clark is way better than Angel Reese. Right now, I'm sure Angel will improve and get better over the course of her career. But I'm sitting here and I'm watching, and I'm just like, if Caitlin Clark is not the unanimous Rookie of the Year, I think I'm going to be a little upset. Is that like how you feel about it? Do you think Caitlin Clark should be the runaway for Rookie of the Year? How do you kind of view that?
Yeah, the race is over. I mean, it's been over for a bit. I don't know the exact time. Like people do forget that early in the season, Angel was ahead, and that was like that's a reasonable opinion. But now it's over. Like Caitlin has got it. For sure. I mean, her team's better. Her stats are better. The Fever are better with her on the floor than the Sky or with Angel. Like, okay, that's fine. I think it's so strange in modern sports discourse that like saying someone who's an all-star rookie is the second best rookie is like an insult. Like she's still really good. It's fine. It's okay. That's fine. Like people are so excited about anointing players and putting them in these conversations. It's like, no, it's saying someone's really good. It's fine. Like people keep, not to flip this conversation, but like people keep saying, wow, should Caitlin be in the MVP discussion? No, Asia's just been better. That's fine. Caitlin's still really good. And so to get back to Rookie of the Year, yeah, should win, and she should win by a lot. I kind of don't think it will be unanimous. W voting's always been kind of strange. Last year, Asia Wilson got a 4th place MVP vote, which was ridiculous. So I kind of don't think it will be unanimous. I think it should be. Like on merit, Caitlin has been the best rookie by quite a bit. But I think she'll win. I think she'll win by a healthy amount. I think she probably will make an all-WNBA team. I think she should make an all-W team. And then maybe MVP discussions next year are reasonable. I mean, her start to the season, as you talked about, was not awesome. But, yeah, she should run away with Rookie of the Year. I mean, they both said it before that Sky game. Both players were like, no, we don't care. We just want to win. Well, Caitlin's team won, and she was way better. So I think that kind of cements it, right? So, yeah, I think she should win it for sure.
Joined by Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. You ruined my next question because I was going to say Asia Wilson should clearly be the MVP.
It's over.
Will Caitlin Clark get any votes? That was going to be my question.
Well, it's funny you say that because votes is like you fill out 5. Yeah, she'll get some votes. She'll get some. I don't know what the highest should be. Probably 4th would be the highest I could imagine. I don't think she should, but I could I guess hear someone out who said that. So yeah, she'll get some votes. Basketball Reference will have a little line next to her name that says MVP 8th or something like that. But I mean, if she gets a 1st place vote, I would be pretty surprised, right? Because Asia's level is this is one of the best seasons ever. Like a lot of advanced stats say she's having one of the best seasons ever. It's a shame that the rest of her team couldn't guard you and me out there, but because they should be way better than 4th in the league. We're 2-time reigning champs, but yeah, it's insane. Like she's putting up a 30 and 10 game every 4 games. right now, and it's harder to do both of those things in the W than other leagues.
She had 41 and 17 in a game over the weekend.
And
I mean,
lost.
she's nuts.
They lost.
Which is
they
just
lost that game.
Incredible.
Oh.
But no, okay, so I'm gonna challenge your history knowledge of the WNBA here, because I don't know. I may have my facts wrong on this. Aaliyah Boston was the unanimous rookie of the year last year, right?
That is correct, yes.
Has there ever been a team to have back-to-back unanimous rookie of the years?
Ooh,
I would assume not. I don't know the answer to it, but I find it interesting.
Yeah, because it's so rare that the drop from 1 to 2 is so obvious, like it was in last year's draft even. Like Caitlin and Angel, and even, I mean, this year's draft, Cam Brake's really good before she got hurt. Rakia Jackson's having a good year. Like last year's draft was Leah and then a big gap. Sabrina's year was really obvious, but she got hurt. I'm trying to just think of number 1 picks who the Aces had 3 straight years of Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Asia Wilson. There's a chance that stretch featured 2 unanimous ones in a row, but I'm not certain. I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay.
I know where I can find out, but I don't know right now.
Okay. I'm really curious. But anyway, I want to talk about the playoffs because those are coming up. The WNBA season ends in like 2 weeks, something like that. Once again, joined by Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, and he also writes and covers the Indiana Fever. I am of the opinion that the Fever would rather play the Sun than the Lynx. Is that kind of how you feel, or who do you think is kind of the best matchup for the Fever?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part about the Fever's playoff clinching is that their 2 most likely opponents are probably 2 of the toughest matchups in the league for them in terms of opponent quality. I mean, the Lynx has a better player this year among the 2 teams in Nafisha Collier, although Alyssa Thomas last year, I think, probably won MVP, so they're both absurdly good. I don't know where I land on where that matchup is because the Lynx offense is so good and they shoot it so well that really stresses out the Fever defense and it makes it harder for them to play in transition. Like, yeah, they beat Minnesota on the road, but feet in play. Whereas Connecticut they've had the best combo of players in Dejanay Carrington and Ty Harris at guard and Caitlin specifically. And they have Atia and Bree Jones, obviously. And they smoked the Fever in the first 3 games before the Fever beat them last week. That's pretty close. I might agree with you that I think I agree with you that it's Connecticut just because the Connecticut offense can occasionally get bogged down and let the Fever play their style, which they just did to beat them, whereas I don't think that's as easy to do against Minnesota. But that's really close. It's kind of what do you want to go against? A team that has some answers for Caitlin but may not be able to be as consistent on offense, or a team that has fewer answers to guard the Fever but will score whenever they want. They're both really hard. I think a lot of people locally will be rooting for the Fever to play the Lynx because it's much easier to get from Indianapolis to Minneapolis than Indianapolis to Hartford. The local interest.
Well, I think that the WNBA wants, I would think at least, in terms of like storylines, I think they would rather the Fever play the Lynx too, right? Because obviously, the Lynx head coach was the Olympic head coach, and she had some choice words for Caitlin. So from a drama aspect, it's probably the Lynx, but I don't know. You can please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm interpreting so much of this WNBA stuff through my NBA perspective of like when I think about the playoffs in the NBA, I think about stars, and it's like if you have the best player in the series, you're probably going to win the series. And I feel like if the Fever were to play the Lynx, Collier would probably be the best player in the series, whereas if the Fever played the Sun, it might be Caitlin. Is that kind of how you would feel about it, or are the WNBA playoffs more about depth? Which teams usually advance in the WNBA playoffs? The team that has more depth or the team that has a legit star?
The star power has mattered. Alyssa Thomas is amazing, though. I think that she's better than Caitlin this year. She was not better when they just played last week, which is why the Fever won that game. But historically, she almost averaged a triple-double last year. She played like 40 minutes every game, and she can guard. I always try to ask if you had I actually have an official vote in the W. And I try to ask a few head coaches, like off the side, hey, who do you like, blah, blah, blah. A lot of them liked Alyssa Thomas last year, right? She didn't win. It was Stewie, which is fine. Stewie's amazing, but AT's that level of player, like on both ends. that would be close. I think obviously for the next half decade plus, Kalen's gonna pass a bunch of these players, obviously. But this year, Fee and AT are probably both better. But like the Aces star power has kind of changed how you think about this because they have a lot of stars. But like the Fever won their title with depth in 2012, and the Lynx won their several titles. Yeah, they had like insane top end talent, but they had a ton of depth. They were loaded. The Sky won their recent title with depth. Like it kind of goes both ways in this league because of the way that the CBA is set up more than anything. But very recently, as teams have kind of figured this out with how to balance the protected contracts and have the best team possible, it's been more about star power. And that's why I wonder, if I think the best case for the Fever matchup wise would be, can they get to 5? Is that actually possible? They'd have to catch the Storm, which is extremely hard. Maybe they beat the Aces twice at home down the stretch of the season and can catch Vegas. And I don't know if they want to play Asia in the first round, but that team can't guard anything. So I think that would probably be their best chance of winning in the first round, is somehow sneaking into that 5-4, just because I think of their 3 worst matchups in the league, which to me is Connecticut, Minnesota, and Dallas, 2 of them are the team that can play in the first round. So I think they would love to get to 4 or 5 if they could.
Okay. All right. Two more questions for you, Tony, and I'll let you go. Once again, joined by Tony East, host of Locked On Pacers, writes and covers the Fever. You can follow him on Twitter at Tony R East to see everything that he has going on over there on Twitter. So, I mean, are the Liberty the favorite? Like, if you had to pick a winner today, would they be who you picked, or are you still in the feeling of the Aces have won back-to-back titles? It's kind of hard for me to pick against them.
Yeah, my answer would be the Liberty right now for sure. Chelsea Gray just had our best game of the season last night as the Aces beat the Sky, and that obviously was the one that clinched the Fever making it. And if Chelsea Gray starts playing good, I might pick the Aces. I mean, obviously they have the pedigree to deserve it, but the Liberty have basically the same team as last year minus Johannes, but Sabrina's been way better, like probably the best guard in the league this year. And they still have Stewie and John Quell and all that. So I think that because Sabrina's gotten better from a team that was already, seconds away from potentially forcing a pivotal game 5 without Chelsea Gray last year, I think the Liberty could have won that game had it happened. They were close to winning last year and didn't. I think they definitely are the favorites, but if Chelsea Gray starts looking good and the Aces have their whole mojo back, it's going to be just so hard for me to pick against them, right? They steamrolled everybody last year.
Yeah, fair enough. Last question. I know you're a basketball guy, but I have to know if you have a prediction for the Colts season, which starts on Sunday.
Oh, yes. I think they will be fun and just outside the playoffs. I don't know it's 17 games now, so it's really hard for me to think of what that record is. 9-8 sounds like I feel like I don't know, 10-7 feels like they would make it, right? I feel like they'll either go 8-9 or 9-8, and they'll be fun at that level because they have so many interesting guys. But is fun and not making the playoffs good enough for their current leadership? That's kind of the big question.
Yeah, that is the big question that everyone's trying to figure out. Tony, thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate your knowledge on the W. It's helped me a lot this year just in watching it. I'm ready for the playoffs. I'm excited. Thanks for your time, man.
Yep, thanks for having me, dude.
So, that is Tony East. Follow him on Twitter at Tony R East. Great guy. Does great coverage of the Fever and the Pacers. Host of Locked On Pacers, and then he writes for the Indiana Fever as well. And as excited as I am for the WNBA playoffs, seeing what Caitlin Clark looks like in the playoffs, I got to be honest, way more excited about Sunday. Colts, Texans, Final 5 Takes, Colts edition continues when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a nice Wednesday. I know I am. NFL season kicks off tomorrow night. You can listen to the Chiefs-Ravens game tomorrow night right here on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM. While I'm talking about the station, head over to YouTube. Go to the little search bar there. Search Indy Sports Ticket. We should pop up. Subscribe. Watch via the live stream. It's a blast. Hop in the chat. Talk about whatever they're talking about in the chat. But Colts season starts on Sunday. I've been doing final 5 takes leading up to the start of the season. So basically a big take every single show. Last week on Friday, I said that Anthony Richardson would finish the year with a 3-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio. Yesterday, I said Michael Pittman Jr. will not lead the Colts in receiving yards. Don't know who it's going to be. If I had to make a bet, I would bet Josh Downs. We'll see how that pans out, though. And today, I'm telling you that Jonathan Taylor is going to have a good year. Okay, I am excited to see how Jonathan Taylor plays this year. He should be very fresh coming off of a career low in touches last year. Okay, now, if you've listened to my show at all, then you know that I don't think as highly of Jonathan Taylor as a lot of Colts fans do. I think he's had one great year. The other, 3 years of his career, he's been good, not great, just good, which is fine. Like I'm cool with good. That works for me. But there's some Colts fans out there that act like every year he's, played to a similar level as he did the second year of his NFL career. I believe that the way that, not even just Colts fans, but NFL fans in general view Jonathan Taylor is inflated based off of something that happened 3 years ago. Okay, he's been good for the most part, and he's been great 1 year, and that's great. Okay, I like it. It's good. I like it when the Colts have good players like Jonathan Taylor. I do think this year, though, we are going to see something a little more similar to the performance we got from Jonathan Taylor 3 years ago. Like, he's going to get a ton of touches. He's going to rack up a ton of yards. I think the Colts are really going to lean on him to carry the offense at the start of the year, especially early in the year when Anthony Richardson gets reacquainted to playing real NFL football. Okay, because it's going to take him a while to adjust to the speed of the defenses and all those things, because playing in the preseason is cool. Playing in training camp is cool. It's not the same thing as the real deal. So early in the year, I think we're going to get a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor. I think we're going to get a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor on Sunday. And when we look at the year that he had 3 years ago, he had 372 total touches on the year between receptions and carries. I think we're going to see him have a similar number. Wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if he surpassed that number of 372 touches. Okay, he had over 2,000 scrimmage yards that year as well. Had like 1,800 yards rushing. I mean, the dude was crazy. He was the best running back in the NFL that year. And if he stays healthy, I think we're going to see a similar number of touches from him this year, because, look, the backup running backs aren't that great. Trey Sermon's fine. Tyler Goodson's fine. Like, they're backups. Like, that's clearly what they are. Okay? But I don't expect them to get a ton of action if Jonathan Taylor's healthy. He's going to be the bell cow. He's going to be the guy that the Colts lean on consistently. And because of that, he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. If Jonathan Taylor stays healthy, I think he will finish the year with around 1,300 rushing yards on the season. Okay, if he finished with 1,300 rushing yards last year, that would have put him second in the NFL behind Christian McCaffrey for reference there. And I believe that he'll finish the year with a couple hundred receiving yards. I know that some people want the Colts to throw him the ball out of the backfield. That's just not his strength. Okay, and I'll be honest, why throw Jonathan Taylor the ball when you can throw it to A.D. Mitchell or Josh Downs or Michael Pittman Jr.? I'd rather throw it to an actual wide receiver. Okay, I do think that Jonathan Taylor will finish the year, though, with over 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Okay, I think he's going to have a good year this year. He's going to be used a ton. But with as many yards as he's going to rack up this year, I don't think that the touchdown number is going to be high. I think he's going to finish the year with around 8 touchdowns. He might get to 10, but I would honestly be surprised if he got to 10 touchdowns on the year. in the red zone, that's where running backs score touchdowns, right? Turn around, handing the ball off on, first and goal from the 3, lower your head, get behind, Quentin Nelson, Hall of Fame offensive guard, and just plow your way into the end zone. That is where touchdowns usually come from for running backs. The issue, though, is the Colts have Anthony Richardson. And I fully believe that he's going to be the guy that the Colts go to when they get down to the goal line, because running the football, it's all about numbers. It's all about numbers. Okay. And when you run the quarterback, it gives you an extra blocker. Okay. Because look, when you hand the ball off to your running back, you're essentially playing 10 on 11 because the quarterback's not going to get his butt out there and block. And they shouldn't, especially Anthony Richardson. But if Anthony Richardson is carrying the ball, Jonathan Taylor will undoubtedly get out there and be his lead blocker. So I think because of that, we're going to see a drop in the number of touchdowns you would normally expect from Jonathan Taylor, because I think that around the goal line, a bulk of these red zone inside the 5 carries are going to go to Anthony Richardson instead of Jonathan Taylor. Okay? And so that's the one thing about Jonathan Taylor this year. If you're expecting him, to rack up 10, 11, 12 touchdowns on the season, I'm sorry, you're going to be disappointed. But I do think he's going to be productive, from the time that the Colts get the ball to the point that they're, inside the 10 or the 5-yard line. When we look at Shane Steichen and what he liked to do in Philly, he loved to run Jalen Hurts when they were in the red zone. He did. That's something that has continued on in Philly. Okay, like it is very normal for teams with big athletic quarterbacks to run them down near the goal line. Josh Allen led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last year because the Bills ran him when they got inside, the 5 or whatever, because once again, you get that extra blocker. Jalen Hurts had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. And Anthony Richardson is undoubtedly a guy that you want running the football when you're inside the 5 with the size and the strength and the speed. And I know, people are worried about him getting hurt. The buildup isn't the same. Okay. Like when you're, first and, 5 or second and 5 from, your opponent's 40-yard line, and the Colts snap the ball and it's a pass play, and you see Anthony Richardson take off, the safety coming down has like a 20-yard head start. Like they've got a full head of steam. If Anthony Richardson takes that hit, it's going to be pretty punishing. Whereas when you're on the 3-yard line, like the field only extends 13 yards further, and guys aren't starting their defensive rep on the back of the end zone. Like they aren't doing that. So the buildup is only like an 8-yard run. So those hits aren't quite as damaging. I do think we're going to see Anthony Richardson get a ton of carries down there, which is going to take touchdowns away from Jonathan Taylor on the season. Now, it's only Wednesday, but I keep thinking about Sunday. I'm excited for the Colts' first game of the year, but there are 3 players in particular that I am intrigued to see how they play on Sunday. I've got those 3 players for you when we come back here in 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. 20 minutes left. Then I pass the mic over to the great Dan Dockich's show live from noon to 3. He's got quite the show planned out today. He's got a monster, as he would say. Tom Lukenbill, 1:30. Todd Leary, 1 o'clock. The Power Hour with Kent Sterling from 2 to 3 to wrap up the Dan Dockich Show. Once again, that show starts at noon. Listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app. And while you're probably excited for Dan's show, I got to be honest. I'm excited for one thing right now, and that is Sunday. I'm also excited for tomorrow because the Chiefs play the Ravens, but just NFL football in general. I'm so ready for it. Okay, we've been waiting. It's been a long off season. I love talking about Caitlin Clark, and talking about the Pacers was fun, and it's been a blast. But there's nothing like talking NFL football. Nothing like it. And the Colts season starts on Sunday, and I've been thinking a fairly decent amount about what that game's going to look like. What are the things that I want to see? Who am I interested in watching? And yesterday, I had Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts on. He joined the show, and we talked about the Colts season and how that's about to start. And I asked him who he was most excited or interested in watching on Sunday. And I started thinking about the question myself. I was like, who do I want to see? And there are 3 players that came to mind when it came to this question of which players are you interested in seeing. I want to see how Nick Cross plays. I think his success is going to be vital to the Colts' success as a whole this year, which doesn't make me feel good. Probably doesn't make you feel very good either, because the last 2 years, the production has been lacking, to put it nicely. Production just hasn't been there. But, if we want to go glass half full, if we want to be happy, excited about something, he was good in the preseason, which I know doesn't mean a lot. Okay, I know a lot of dudes look good in the preseason, and then they can't hack it when the NFL regular season actually starts. Okay, but look, there's something to build off of there with what Nick Cross did in the preseason. Hopefully, he can carry it over into the regular season. I thought he tackled well. I thought he defended well. He didn't get beat deep on anything. He looked good in the preseason, and he needs to look that good on Sunday. If he is that good on Sunday, if he tackles well and he doesn't get beat deep, then the Colts will win. I think that it is that simple. The Colts have to limit big plays if they want to beat the Texans on Sunday. Let's be honest. These cornerbacks, not great. Jalen Jones, 7th-round pick. Don't have very much confidence in him. Second-year player, Juju Brents, who can't really stay healthy. Don't have very much confidence in him either. I really don't. And because of that, these safeties have to play well. They have to pick up the slack. Okay, Julian Blackmon is the only player on the back end of this defense that I have any sort of confidence in. Shane Steichen, Gus Bradley, really the entire Colts staff, they have raved about how good of a training camp, Julian Blackmon has had. Hopefully that bleeds over into the regular season, because the Colts need him to be great, and they need for Nick Cross to be good. They need him to be a good player, because if Nick Cross isn't, then we're going to be watching Nico Collins burn dudes, and we're going to see a bunch of big chunk plays from the Texans, and that is not okay. It's just not okay, right? If that happens, then the Colts have no shot on Sunday. So Nick Cross has to play well. Next guy I am interested in seeing is Leatu Latu, because he, like Julian Blackmon, has just gotten so much praise from offensive linemen, coaches, Chris Ballard. Everyone has been singing the praises of Colts rookie, Colts first-round pick, Leatu Latu. And honestly, I think we're going to be a little bit disappointed in what we see from Leatu Latu on Sunday, right? Because he's definitely been talked up. He is perceived as this dominant pass rushing presence, and that just isn't what he's going to be on Sunday. He has an incredibly tough matchup coming his way when the Colts take on the Houston Texans. Okay, like that, the matchup he's about to have to deal with in Laramie Tunsil, one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. Like, that is a tough first matchup for a rookie. It is incredibly difficult. I'm interested to see how they move him around. Right? Like, do they put him on the other side of the defensive line? That way he doesn't have to deal with Laramie Tunsil, because that's not a guy that I would want to deal with. Seriously. Because once again, Laramie Tunsil is one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. And because of that, I do think Leatu Latu is going to struggle a bit. I do. And that's fine, right? Rookie, first game, playing against an elite offensive tackle. Now, if Leatu Latu does have a good game and he is impactful against Laramie Tunsil, that is going to be an incredibly great sign. Like, if Leatu Latu comes out next week and he has or on Sunday, and if he comes out and he has 2 sacks and 4 pressures and a couple quarterback hits against Laramie Tunsil, then that's going to tell you right there and then that the Colts got an absolute dude with the 15th pick. Okay, Leatu Latu, got to be honest, not expecting much from him, but I am excited and intrigued to see how he looks against one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. The last guy that I'm interested in seeing, part of it is I find the player interesting. The other part of it is the NFL rule changes that I find interesting. Anthony Gould, I think he's going to have an important role for the Colts, not only this week, but the entire season. I don't think that Josh Downs is going to play this week. I'd be really surprised if he did. Okay, just because we know the history of the Colts. Guys don't come back in time usually. So we're going to see Anthony Gould take some snaps at wide receiver. More importantly, though, where I think he's really going to make an impact on the game, or where he's going to have an opportunity to make an impact on the game. That's better worded there. He's going to return kicks, right? He's going to return kickoffs. He's going to return punts. And those are legitimate plays now. Okay, the kickoff, you've got, the landing zone that you have to kick it in. And if you kick it in the end zone, then the ball starts, at the 30 or whatever the rule is, right? So that kickoff is an important play. It is, something that you can't go take a piss during anymore. You have to actually sit down and watch it because, you could see a guy take one back to the house. And I think it's going to be important for the Colts this year to be dynamic on special teams, right? It's one of the 3 phases. When I think back to the Patriots and that dynasty, they were always great on special teams, right? We focused a lot on Tom Brady. We focused a lot on Belichick and the defense, but they were always great on special teams, and it never cost them a game. And I think that for the Colts, look, it's Anthony Richardson's first game in a long time. Having good field position is always an advantage. But when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, who's inexperienced, isn't going to be incredibly consistent, then field position becomes all the more important. Special teams becomes all the more important. And hopefully, Anthony Gould can make some big things happen in the return game during week 1. We know he's explosive, 4.3 speed, all of those awesome things. But I need to see him actually make some plays. I think the Colts are going to need it. I'm excited to see how teams go about dealing with the new kickoff rules. I really am, because it's something new, something we haven't had in what feels like forever. Legitimate kickoff plays, obviously where guys line up now, is different. I mean, it's truly incredible. It really is. I'm excited to see kind of how all the different teams address this. I know we got to see it some during the preseason, but at the same time, preseason, regular season, different things. Teams are trying to hide things during the preseason. Speaking of hiding things, Carolina Panthers probably should have just hid Bryce Young on the bench last year. Okay, I've been doing my final 5 takes in NFL edition as well, and my take today is that Bryce Young is going to be much improved from last year. Okay, look, I don't think that he's going to be a star. I don't think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL or anything like that. But Bryce Young is going to be much better this year than he was last year. Last year, he only completed 60% of his passes. He only threw for 2,800 yards. He only threw 11 touchdowns, and he threw 10 interceptions. And 11 to 10 touchdown to interception ratio isn't great. but he's going to be much better this year, I think. When we look at the Panthers last year and we look at Bryce Young and just the situation that he was in, it wasn't good. Frank Reich was his head coach who got fired 8 games into the season. Okay, like that's probably not the head coach you want coaching your rookie quarterback. Bryce Young got sacked 62 times last year in 16 games. Panthers' offensive line was terrible. Bryce Young's best wide receiver last year was 34-year-old Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen was good when he was in Minnesota 5 years ago, 6 years ago. That's probably not the guy that you want to be the best receiver on your team when you have a rookie quarterback. Okay, and look, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I do think I'm pretty smart, though. If you surround your rookie quarterback with a bad head coach, a bad offensive line, and no weapons, your rookie quarterback's going to struggle, no matter who it is. Your experienced veteran quarterback is going to struggle if you're on a team like that. Like if you took Patrick Mahomes and you put him on the Panthers last year, the Panthers still would have been terrible. But the Panthers have revamped their roster and their coaches now. You know, Dave Canales from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, offensive coordinator last year, he's now the head coach. He can't be worse than Frank Reich. Okay, Canales has also had success with other quarterbacks throughout his career. Russell Wilson's best year in Seattle was 2020. Canales was the passing game coordinator. Geno Smith, his best year as the starter in Seattle came in 2022 when Canales was the passing coordinator. And then last year, he ends up in Tampa Bay as the offensive coordinator, and he helps Baker Mayfield put together the best year of his career when it looked like he was on his way out of the league. Okay, Canales has had success with quarterbacks before. He's going to do things to help Bryce Young, and more importantly, he can't be worse than Frank Reich. Personnel-wise, they improved the offensive line. They went out into free agency, brought in 2 new offensive guards to kind of help shore up the middle. Sure, you want better offensive tackles when it comes to pass protection, but when you're the Panthers and you're this bad, you'll take whatever you can get. And then on top of that, they addressed weapons in the draft. They spent a first-round pick on Xavier Legette, a wide receiver. They signed Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh. Okay, they also drafted a running back, Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. Like, he's going to be a good running back. I know he got hurt during training camp, but when he comes back, he'll be good. Look, it's not a huge upgrade, but it's better than having 34-year-old Adam Thielen as your best receiver. Okay? I think that I don't think it was possible to give an accurate grade to Bryce Young last year because he was on the worst roster in the NFL. I'm intrigued to see how he looks this year. I think he's going to be a lot better. I think we're actually going to be able to form an opinion on whether or not he's any good because he's not going to get sacked 62 times, and his best wide receiver isn't going to be, Adam Thielen, 34-year-old Adam Thielen. So better coach, better weapons, better offensive line. Hopefully he won't be running for his life this year. His best receiver won't be 34-year-old Adam Thielen. So I think this is the first year we're actually going to get to see if Bryce Young's any good or not. And I think we're going to walk away from this season thinking that Bryce Young is a capable starter in the NFL. Okay, I don't think we're going to think he's a star. I don't know if we're going to think he's a tier 2 quarterback, but I think we're going to walk away where we're like, you know what? Bryce Young's your starting quarterback. You're fine. Okay, if you can run the ball and play good defense, then Bryce Young can win you some games. I think that's going to be our evaluation at the end of the year. Tough to come to that conclusion when you go 2-14 in your rookie season, but once again, that situation that he was drafted into was not great. That's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe, join the chat, all those things. It's a blast in there. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way here in 5 minutes.